Oh, hello and welcome into Free and Easy Project Collaboration Guide for Unreal Engine video series. Okay, let's go into it. Alright, so welcome to Free and Easy Project Collaboration Setup Guide for Unreal Engine. Or in other words, how to work with others on the same project while using Unreal Engine 4. And all of this for free, and the setup itself is easy. So let's go through the overview. If you don't know yourself already, why would you need something like this? Let's go through some general use cases. You would need this if you want to simultaneously work with collaborators on the same project, and by collaborators we mean friends, colleagues, partners, clients, etc. etc. You wouldn't need something like this if you want to be better organized. You would need something like this if you want to keep your projects safe in a cloud. You want to save some time and money. Your clients need a way to access and download your work in cases when they want to revisit the changes that you've done, to catch up with the progress, etc. etc. All right, proceeding. Let's go through the requirements. So in order to run this setup, you would need Windows operation system. While Git does support other OSs, but since Unreal Engine 4 is Windows exclusive, so yeah, this is like a thing. So proceeding, you would need GitHub account. If you don't have one already, you can go to github.com/join and register yourself, and it's pain free and easy setup as well. Of course, you would need internet connection, and as fast as possible internet connection is recommended, but yeah, do your best and try to find the best internet. You would also need Epic Games account. Well, this is something obvious, but I wanted to include that as well. Your projects would have to have files smaller than 100 megabytes. This is because 100 megabytes per file is GitHub's free plan limit. This doesn't necessarily mean that your repositories or projects are not allowed to have files that are bigger than 100 megabytes, but for the sake of simplicity for this video series, let's stick to files that are smaller than 100 megabytes in file size. But I'm also going to create another video which is going to showcase how you can have a workaround solution for situations like this. And also you would need any Unreal Engine version installed, and at the time of filming this video series, 4.26 Unreal Engine version is the latest one. Alright, proceeding. Let's go through the breakdown. What is Git, what is GitHub, and what is Git GUI? Alright, so Git is a version source control software. It is used for tracking changes and keeping historical versions of the project's files. So it's like a manager of your files, and basically a piece of software that is dealing with all the files and repositories and project files in overall. All right. GitHub, which is owned by Microsoft, by the way, is a hosting platform for Git repositories or projects. GitHub's free plan offers plenty of stuff, but there is also a paid plan. Note that GitHub, as previously mentioned, offers 100 megabytes as file size limit on its free plan. As I said, in normal circumstances, you should never need to store files bigger than 100 megabytes. If you need to do so, consider using LFS, which stands for large file size. But as I said already, workaround technique is going to be filmed in a separate video and demonstrated. Now, coming to Git GUI, or Git Graphics User Interface, is a separate application which works together with Git and makes Git stuff human readable. Proceeding. And now let's go through this diagram that I drew myself, and to explain things visually from theoretical perspective. So first and foremost, we have our GitHub account, which is hosting our repositories, and one repository is per project. So I have 3 repositories at the moment, but we are gonna be focusing on this green one as our main project, so to call it. But I wanted to showcase that you can also have other projects or repositories in your GitHub account, and those don't necessarily have to be Unreal Engine based projects. They can be something else. Feel free to choose and use GitHub for other projects. But for the time being, we are gonna be focusing on this green one. And we have our imaginary team of 5 people. We have level designer, programmer, animator, technical artist, and 2D artist. And in this imaginary example, I made it so that our 2D artist, as you can see, is not collaborating with the rest of the team on our green project. He's working with technical artist on some other project, the third project in this case. And we also have technical artist and our programmer working on this second project. But coming back to our main and first project, we have a group of 4 people working on it at the same time. We have level designer, we have our programmer, animator, and technical artist. They can work on it at the same time, but they can't work on the same files at the same time, which is going to be covered in next videos separately. But they can also work individually. For example, our level designer can work on an environment on its own, and for example, technical artist and animator can work on our characters, animations, whatever, and programmer can be working on its own code or scripts, or maybe helping other guys and collaborating with them. And all of these things are going to be covered in more detail in the upcoming videos. So the next steps would be to download and install Git for Windows. This is covered in the next video of this video series. Git is supported by other OSs, but Unreal Engine is Windows OS only, so we need Git for Windows. And you can go to the link that you can see on the screen. The second step would be to download and install any of the Git graphic user interfaces out there available. And you can see the link on the screen as well. So this is the link. As I said already, I personally prefer Sourcetree, which will be covered in a separate video. But as I said, there are other Git GUIs out there, so feel free to choose one, but I personally recommend Sourcetree. The third step would be to create a project or repository on GitHub, or if you already have your GitHub/repository on your GitHub account, then you would have to clone the project itself. So let's say that you already have your project, but you've reinstalled your Windows or reinstalled your repositories, or maybe, God forbid, lost your project files or something bad happened, and then you have to download the project, or in other words, clone it from your GitHub repository. And then the fourth step would be to start developing and enjoy this setup, which allows you to be more organized, be prepared in cases if something bad happens with your local files, and have easier time collaborating with your friends, colleagues, or partners, whoever you want to collaborate with in your projects, and all in all, make your life more easy, and all of this for free. Now I'm going to show you how to download and install Git. So let's go to git-scm.com/download, and you will be welcomed by this page. So let's click on download for Windows, and it should start automatically, and let's give it a second or few seconds to download. And in the meantime, if you haven't, I'm encouraging you and highly recommending to download and install Notepad++. And this is done. Let's press run, and yes. And now the installation wizard has started, and let's click on next. See, program files is okay, next. And we can leave these things as default, next, next. And now you see the thing, so it's asking us to select the default editor, and now I'm going to select use Notepad++ as Git's default editor. That is recommended by me. Next. Now for this thing, we can leave it, let Git decide, or you can override. It doesn't matter that much. So it's asking about default name for new branch. Let's click next. And you can leave this option as recommended as well. And the next thing, you can use the default option, next. So most of these options you can leave as they are default, but if you want and go ahead and play with it, go ahead, but I don't recommend it unless you really know what are you doing. And for this thing, we can click next and select the default option. This is fine as well, I think. Yes, use Minty. Default fast forward merge, that's fine as well. Next. Git credential manager, that's the default option, that's fine as well. So basically it's like next, 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 just like you're installing a game. Files, enable file system caching, that's fine as well. Next. Enable experimental support for pseudo consoles. I don't need this. Click install. And it shouldn't take a while because it's a rather small piece of software. So Git is installed and we don't really need release notes. And now let's proceed with installation process of GUI. And as for Git's GUI, I personally prefer Sourcetree. GUI or GUI stands for Graphics User Interface. And go to sourcetreeapp.com and download for Windows. Agree, and it's gonna download. Give it a few seconds and let's run the installer. Now the installation wizard has started, and for this registration we can skip because we are not gonna use Bucket Server or Bitbucket. Skip. And for this we don't need Mercurial because we are using just Git. And this is why I recommend installing Git first rather than going Sourcetree first, because as you can see, Sourcetree has detected that we already have the Git installed and it's already configured, so this is fine. And the configure automatic line ending by default, we don't need to select this. We don't need to check this option because it's already configured by Git. And configure global ignore, we don't need that as well, so you can leave these options unchecked and Mercurial unchecked. So let's proceed and click next. And before we finish, take a moment to configure these settings. So I'm gonna call this Valsogar laptop, but you can call it however you want it. And make sure to pick a nice username that you want to use for your machine. And I need to fill out the email. Now, do you have an SSH key that you would like to load? No, because we are not using SSH. And now we are in Sourcetree and the installation process of Git and Sourcetree are done. And now that Git and Sourcetree are installed, we are ready to proceed with GitHub. So go to github.com, and if you don't have your account, go ahead and click on sign up. The sign up process is fairly pain-free and easy. But in this case, I do have my GitHub account, so I'm going to click on sign in. I'm going to type in my email and my password. And now I'm logged in, and on the left side, you are going to see some of the repositories that I already have. Some are blurred out. Anyway, let's proceed with creating a new GitHub repository by clicking on this green button which says new. And now we are welcomed with this new window. And first thing, we have to type in our repository name. I recommend, it's not necessary, but I personally prefer and recommend to name my repositories just the same way I would name my projects. So in this case, let's give it some funny name like Tutorial Alpha Project. So we got a little bit creative here with the name. Anyway, proceeding, public or private. Now, in most cases, you're gonna select private because you're working on your projects yourself, or maybe with your collaborators. You don't want others to be capable of accessing your repository. Now, proceeding, initialize this repository with, I recommend adding a README file and adding a git ignore file. Now we are going to have this drop down menu, and depending on your platform or your developing environment that you're using, you will have other options. But for this case, we want to select Unreal Engine. You could also type in and Unreal Engine is going to show up. It's selected. Okay, choose a license. I'm not going to choose any license for the moment, and I'm going to create repository and give it a few seconds, and boom, done. Okay, our repository has been created, and as you can see at the moment, it only contains these two files, which are readme.md and .gitignore files. Now I'm going to show you how to create the project and push it, or in other words, upload it, so that we have some files here as well. All right, let's proceed. So open Epic Games Launcher, library, and here you can see I have just 4.26.0 version of Unreal Engine installed, and I only have this one project which we can ignore at the moment. So let's launch the project. Launch the engine, and now select or create a new project. I'm going to select games so that I create a new project. Next, I'm going to select third-person template, which I like to use for tutorials, and directory. I have a special directory which I keep for my Unreal Engine projects, which is already pre-selected for me, but I'm going to select it once again anyway. And now I'm going to name my project, which should be called Tutorial Alpha Project, just like my repo. Tutorial Alpha Project. As I said before, you don't have to have the same name between your project and repository, but this is the way I prefer it. And I pressed on create project, And now I'm going to give it a few seconds, and our project is created. We can start developing, we can do stuff with it. But I'm going to close it for the moment so I can upload it, or to use proper term, push it to repository. Okay, let's proceed. First, I'm going to rename the project's folder. Now let me first show you how I accessed that folder. Right click on your project in library, show in folder. Okay, I can minimize the launcher, and I can go back one branch. And now I'm going to rename the folder of my project. And now I'm going to show you why. That's because when you want to clone your repository from GitHub, it doesn't allow you to do so if you already have the same name of the project present in your folder. So that's why I've renamed this folder, but I'm going to create the exact same folder just in a second by cloning the repo. So now is the time to clone our repo, which is going to be empty, and then I'm going to move files from this folder inside the new folder, which is going to be our repo or repository folder, and then we are going to proceed. Anyway, enough talking, let's do the stuff. All right, first things, open Sourcetree and click on clone, then go back to your browser and your repository and click on this green button, which is going to open as a menu, and you want to select HTTPS, and you want to copy this link, or you can just press this icon in order to copy the directory to your clipboard. Now you can minimize. All right, coming back to Sourcetree, we have this clone tab, and now in this text field we have to paste our repository, and when you paste the link nothing is going to happen, but once you click elsewhere it's going to do stuff, and it's going to ask you for your GitHub credentials, and it's GitHub. It's going to ask me to sign in. I'm going to click on sign in. Authentication succeeded. You may now close this tab. I'm going to do so. Coming back to Sourcetree. Okay, so repository type. This is a Git repository, so it has been recognized. Okay, so now we have to select where we want to store our repo or clone it, and we can see this is the incorrect location of the project. I'm going to select the correct one. This is the old project. I actually don't want to select anything, but I'm going to right click new folder and name it tutorial alpha project, because as I said before, if I was to select this, it wouldn't allow me to clone here, or I would make some mess. But anyway, this is where my Unreal Engine project files currently are sitting. But for the moment, I'm going to select this folder, which doesn't have the underscore. Okay, select folder, and the project name is already selected. The directory is fine. Root folder, this doesn't have to be changed. Advanced options doesn't have to be changed. Leave it as default. And now I'm going to click on clone and give it some time. Now what it has already done actually is it has downloaded, or to use a proper term, it has pulled the files from the repository, and it was very quick, as you could see, because there are only 2 files to be downloaded or pulled, if I was to use the proper term. Anyway, we are now in our source tree back again, and you can see tutorial alpha project tab. That's the name of our repository. And now we have other menus. And now if we go to history tab, we can see the history of our repository. Anyway, coming to the right side of our screen, we have terminal and we have explorer buttons, which are interesting. Okay, when you press explorer, it's going to open local directory of your project, which we are going to populate with our files in a second. But before that, I'm going to close it and show you another interesting button, which is terminal. When you click on this, it's going to open your Git bash terminal automatically. In other solution, you could open the repository, right click and Git bash here. But as you can see, this terminal button does the same thing but much quicker. And we can close them for the moment, and we can close everything. And now let's go to our repository, and I'm going to back up one step, and this is our source tree, or should I say local GitHub repository, but this is our Unreal Engine project. And in order to, well, make things consolidated and proper, I'm going to move files from here by selecting all of them and right click, cut. I'm going to go back and open this folder, which is our Git repository folder. And you can verify that this is a Git repository by looking at these additional files and cache folders. Anyway, proceeding with the actions, right click and paste. And now my project files are here. I can freely delete this old folder. And let's, for the sake of security, double check and verify that we can open our project, because we were cutting, pasting, moving stuff. It's working just fine. Okay, so now the files of our Unreal Engine project are merged in the folder of our repository. So now let's go back to our source tree, and you can see when I click, it has refreshed, and if it doesn't refresh, just close down the source tree and open it again. All right, so now we can see files here under unstaged tab, and we are going to push the repository, the files of our project. And as you can see, let me show you this actually. So you can see some folders and files. Tutorial, that's our main project file, that's fine. You can see config, you can see content, you can see config and content folders, but you can't see saved or intermediate or derived data cache folders. Why? Because this part is taken care of by git ignore file. So git ignore file tells Git to ignore certain folders or files. And let's right click and open it so you can see. And you can see it's ignoring builds folders as well. Derived data cache is ignored, or should I say derived? I don't know what's the correct pronunciation. Plugins folder is ignored, saved is ignored, build is ignored, and etc, etc. You can also edit this git ignore file yourself with Notepad or Notepad++ or any text editor, but proceed with caution and do things only if you are certain that you know what you're doing. Anyway, coming back to Sourcetree, we have these unstaged files, which means that they are not prepared to be staged or pushed at the moment. And now, if we go through them and if we verify that everything is fine and that we want to push them, we can click on Stage All, or we could, as I prefer it, select them manually or in bulk in order to be extra careful, because when you're developing things, there will be some cases where you want to verify manually and go one by one file or folder just to make sure that you don't commit things that you didn't want to commit. It's reversible if you make bad things, but I think this is a better practice because it's gonna save you some time and headache. Anyway, after I have selected the files that I want to be pushed, I can click on Stage Selected, and now this is giving me this warning message, which says the following files are 10 megabytes or larger. Are you sure you want to add them to source control? Now, GitHub allows you to store files up to 100 megabytes in your repositories. So you should never have files that are bigger than 100 megabytes. In some extreme cases, you could do some workaround, but this won't be covered in this video because only some textures, some crazy textures or build data files should be larger than 100 megabytes, but like in 99.9% of cases, you should be fine with this. Anyway, let's press OK and give it some time because our project has about, let's see, if I select content and config, the size is almost 700 megabytes, so it's gonna take some time. Okay, it's ready to be staged, and I mean it is staged, and now we have to commit. So these files are ready, and now what we have to do is type in the comment and the label of our commit. So let's go ahead and do just that. Let's call it initial commit adding third person template project files. And you can hold Shift and Enter and do it again. So the first line that you type in, just like I did, is going to be your label. It's going to appear here, just like this one, which is called initial commit. And things that you type in after are not going to show up immediately. So let's type in some additional comments so that we know what we have done and our colleagues and collaborators are going to be informed. So, and that's it for this comment. It's fine. And now all we have to do is click on commit, and the things are ready to be pushed. And you can see on the upper left side, this push icon has been changed. And yes, you could click here and let the source tree do its thing and push it, but the way I prefer and the way I think it is more safe is to do it with terminal. So let's click on terminal. And the only thing that I have to do now is type in git spacebar push and press enter. And now I'm going to let it upload, or to use proper term, push the files. And you can see the status of files as they are being uploaded to our GitHub account. And now, after this is done, I'm going to make some changes to the project, just some quick changes so I can show you the process afterwards. And then after that, I'm going to delete the local repository intentionally, just to show you how you can clone your repository afterwards. Now that the push process has completed, we can see some warnings which are letting us know that we might want to try Git large file storage for some of our files which are larger than 10 megabytes, but we can ignore it since we are safe as long as we don't push any files that are bigger than 100 megabytes. And we can close this down, and we can go to Sourcetree and click on history, and we can see that we have this new commit, which is the one that we just did. And let's refresh the Sourcetree, and now this small addition on push icon is gone. And now we can come back to our repository on GitHub website and refresh. And now we see that we have our files appearing here. So it's working just fine. And now I'm going to show you how you can push more changes. So now you're basically ready to develop your project and store it in cloud. And when I say cloud, I mean GitHub. So let's create some changes. Let's do something quick. BP underscore first actor tutorial. And let's do some stuff. It doesn't have to be pretty, just for the sake of quickly adding something. And let's close the project and go back to Sourcetree and go back to file status. And now again, just like before, we have this unstaged files tab, and we have this file detected, the file that we have just created. Let's label the commit. Now my comments are awful, obviously, and you want to keep yours nice, tidy, but for the sake of tutorials, I guess it's nice and just fine. But before committing, I have to stage the file since I forgot to do so. And you can also click on this plus sign to stage it, and it's staged, ready to be committed. And I can now click on commit, and just like before, click on terminal and press git push, type in git push I mean, and it's gonna be much quicker because this is just one file. And now we have no warnings because the file was just a few kilobytes. And let's close the terminal, close the Sourcetree, and check once again in our repository on the GitHub website, and let's go into content folder and third person BP, I believe. Yes, here it is. Here is our another folder, another file that we have just pushed, and we have the timing of the push, which is 37 seconds ago, and the label is another push. And now I'm going to clone this repo on my other computer, and I'm going to change some things on that computer, and then I'm going to show you on this machine how to proceed. So we are going to simulate a scenario in which you are actually collaborating with other people, with your friends, your colleagues, collaborators, clients, doesn't matter. And then I'm going to show you the process how to proceed. And now I'm on my other machine, which is my main PC workstation, compared to the parts before, which were recorded on laptop. And I'm on my GitHub account, and I can see, and I'm going to click on tutorial alpha project repo. And just like before, I'm going to click on this green button code and copy this link, and I'm going to open Sourcetree and go to clone tab and paste the link to Git repo. Give it a few seconds to recognize it. Now I'm going to change the directory, and I'm going to change it, and I have to change this as well manually. Tutorial alpha project. Now it's correct. So I think it's better to name the project first and then change the directory, but hey, just make sure that you have backslash and then name of the project, and at the end and below that you have the name of your repo or your project. Advanced options, just like before, we can leave it as default and clone. Now this time is gonna take slightly more, because compared to last time when we were pushing our project files for the first time, it was fairly quick because there were just two files, git ignore and the readme file. And then after that, we added the third person template files. But now we are cloning the third person files as well. So we are talking about slightly less than 700 megabytes. So it's gonna take some more time, but it's gonna be just fine. All right, our repo has been cloned, and we have the history shown here. And if we click on file status, we should have nothing. And now I'm going to open the project and make some changes in order to simulate a scenario like my colleague or my collaborator has made some changes. And then I'm gonna go back to my first machine, which is laptop, and pull or download the changes from here. Anyway, the project has loaded and it says failed to load build data. This is because we don't push build data. We didn't push it with Sourcetree, which is fine because you can always regenerate build data and you will have no problems whatsoever. And let's make some changes. I'm gonna create a material and call it m_material created on, or let's rename it to by second PC. It's a very stupid name for a material, but just for the sake of easier recognition. And let's add another actor, bp second PC's actor. I'm gonna create just these two files. As I said, this is silly, but just for the sake of this short tutorial, I've closed the project. Always make sure to close the project when you are about to make changes. Anyway, let's go to Sourcetree and it should reload and detect our changes. And here we have this weird scenario in which it detects like we did some changes on our files while we actually didn't. So I'm recommending discarding this and this, so both of these changes. So it's fine to click either discard or remove. So discard, it's gonna take a few seconds. And these files are the ones that we have created. Select both of them and click on stage selected. And now let's write a comment. The main label is done. And let's add some additional comments. And the comments are fine. Click on commit. Give it a few seconds and click on terminal. And just like before, git push. And now we have successfully made a push from other PC in order to simulate the scenario in which our colleague has pushed or collaborator. And now I'm gonna go back to the first workstation, which is laptop in our case, and then show you how to fetch, pull, and proceed with the process. All right, back again at our laptop, which is labeled as workstation number 1, or should I say worker number 1. Anyway, let's say that this is the next day and our colleague Mr. PC has done some changes, but we are not 100% sure about it. We are assuming, we are thinking about it, and let me show you good practice. So we are back at our tutorial alpha project repo link at our GitHub. So we can see a push by PC number 2. Now, in most cases, your colleagues won't label pushes by themselves, but anyway, we can see that some changes have been made since our last login time. And the same good practice, which is the practice of checking if there are changes on our repo, is to do it directly via Sourcetree or terminal in this case. So open Sourcetree, and we don't see anything new. The latest push was by laptop, and we can't see the push by PC. So in order to double check this, let's open terminal and writing command git fetch and pressing enter. Give it some time. So it has detected some changes. So something has been changed in the meantime, and let's close the source tree in order to refresh it and open it back up again. And now we can see another commit which is labeled push by PC number 2. But we can see that this commit is bold. It has bold text, and this means that our local repo version is currently at this stage, and we can see that we are behind by one commit. And in order to fix that, let's open the terminal again and let's type in the command git pull. So it's always a good practice to do git fetch first, because then you are just downloading, you are just opening the trunk to say it that way, in order to investigate what has been changed in the meantime, but you are not actually applying any changes on your local repo, so you can't mess up your local project. And now we can see the message updating, fast forward. Fast forward means that we had the files locally but in cache compared to our actual project files, and we had them because we did fetch first and then we did git pull. So always when you open your terminal, always do git fetch first. This is a good practice even if you know that there are no things to be fetched. It is a good common practice. Just do git fetch or git status after that, and you can see it says on branch main, your branch is up to date, etc, etc. And basically that's it. If we want, we can open our project and verify the changes that we have just pulled. By the way, Sourcetree doesn't update always, so let's go to another tab and go back, and now it has refreshed, and we can see that this push by PC number 2 label is in bold text, which means that our local version is currently at this stage. All right, let's go back to our Unreal Engine and see if we can find the changes made by our second PC content folder, and we can see bp underscore second PC's actor. That's fine. The material is here as well, and that's it. This is the end of this tutorial, and I've showcased how you can collaborate with your others, or maybe just keep your projects secure in cloud. And thank you for watching. There are gonna be more tutorials like this, and yeah, see you soon. Bye. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to leave your comments and share this video with other people who might be interested. Also, please press like and subscribe buttons. It means a lot to us. If you are interested to get to know us better, check out our website at valsogar.com. Again, thank you for watching and see you soon.